what is small, fluffy, and a little bit nutty? An eastern fox squirrel. Here with us today to discuss our nutty backyard neighbors is Dr. James A. Wilson. Originally from Southern California, Dr. Wilson now resides near Omaha, Nebraska, where he teaches zoology, mammalogy, and physiological ecology at the University of Nebraska Omaha. He has a PhD from Oklahoma State, and he did his postdoc at UC Davis. Throughout his career, he has worked with a variety of animals, including raccoons, skunks, and flying squirrels. When not working, he likes to be creative and believes the creative part of being a scientist isn't played up enough. Welcome, Dr. Wilson. I am thrilled to have you here to talk about one of my favorite backyard animals. Today we're going to be talking about the fox squirrel. Tell us about a squirrel's life. When do they leave the nest? How long do they live? How many litters do they have?
Okay, so the squirrels, the tree squirrels, usually, and the fox squirrels do this, they are, like I said, active year-round, and they can have 2 breeding seasons a year. They can mate any time of year, but usually they're either November through February, kind of peaking in December, or April through July, kind of peaking in June. They are able to breed twice a year, but usually they only have 1 litter a year. And the females go into estrus for about a day, and they have 2 to 4 babies per litter. And they keep their babies for about 8 to 12 weeks. They start weaning the babies. And then usually the young, after they wean, they start to kind of separate a little bit and head out on their own. And definitely by the first year, after that first winter, they're definitely on their own. And then that's when they usually start breeding. Even though they can have a baby at 8 months old, they can start reproducing technically, but they usually don't until they're like into the second year of life.
Fox squirrels don't hibernate. I don't feel like we see them as often in the winter. Do they kind of go into a, less active mode?
They're definitely less active. They still come out, but they stay in their little nests a lot more than during the spring and summer kind of thing. Definitely. And they usually have kind of a 2 peak activity during the day. So kind of late morning, and then it goes down during midday, and then kind of late afternoon, evening, they're more active again. But weather does affect if it's like rain or, snow, windy, super windy. That kind of lowers their activity also.
So imagine you are a squirrel.
Yes.
What would you serve at your dinner table and why?
Okay, so my real answer is pizza, because that's always the answer of what you serve. But the squirrel's answer, they like, they mostly focus on, the big seeds like nut type things, acorns and walnuts, and pine seeds, nuts, and they want something that is high in fat, so high lipid content, and low in a chemical called tannins. So tannins are a plant defense, and so plants, when they don't want to be eaten, some plants have a high content of tannins. So it'd be a lot of nuts on the table. They probably eat some like flowers and other things too, but probably focusing more on the nuts.
Let's move on to the nut burying process. Walk us through those steps, because there's a process to burying a nut.
Yeah, so I was looking at this because that's definitely, I'm not a squirrel behavior person, so it's a little outside my area. But they bury like 3,000 to up to 10,000 acorn/nut things in a year, and they are what's called a scatter hoarder. So there's two kinds of burying strategies. One is called larder hoarder, and the other one's a scatter hoarder. And the larder hoarder is an animal that puts it all in kind of one area as a big treasure, like in one big clump. And the scatter hoarders, go all over the place and bury here and there and everywhere. Yeah. So the tree squirrels are more of the scatter hoarder type. But even with that, they don't bury like one here and one there. They bury groups here and groups there. So they're kind of smaller subset groups. And so that's how they can kind of keep track of it better. So it's like, you think of like, how do they find 3,000, acorns and know where each one is? And it's not 3,000. It's like subgroups of them. Yeah. And then they bury, like similar types together. So like walnuts in one area and certain acorns in another. And then they're very good. They have a map, pretty good mental map of their home range, and they're pretty good with that. And so there's been some research I was looking at where they put flags out in their home range, and the squirrels will bury their little nuts, and they'll visually know where that flag is and kind of put it in their little brain map. And then if you go and move the flag, they have trouble finding that nut again, or that acorn again. And so they're kind of basing it off like, oh, it was near this, kind of, but if you move the landmarks, it kind of messes them up a little bit. And then they also seem to bury things that they like farther from the source of that thing. So if it's like, if they like walnuts and it's near the walnut tree, they'll move the walnuts farther away compared to something that they don't really like as much, or that's probably not as high as fat. So that prevents another squirrel from, like, if you bury it close to that source, another squirrel's going to come in because they like that tree, and then they're going to find your stuff. And so if you bury it far away, it reduces that possibility that they could get pilfered by somebody else.
Do they have that issue with other squirrels stealing their
Absolutely.
squirrels often? Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty common thing. It's not like a lot, but it's a pretty, decent amount of other squirrels coming to take your stuff.
What percentage of their 3,000 plus nuts that they bury in a year do they actually re-find?
So it says about 75% they find, which is pretty good. Yeah. But from the tree's perspective, that's still 25% that are left to germinate. That's a lot of possible baby trees.
To make more acorns and walnuts for the squirrels.
Yeah, exactly.
How is the squirrel housing market doing? Or in other words, where and how do squirrels make their home?
So they have basically kind of two kinds of home. Like right now, it's just barely starting to leaf out here in Omaha, and so you can see up in the trees, you can see the sticks and leaves bundles up there. So they have that, which is fine. Those are pretty good, but those are more of the like warm weather homes, and some of those are like tightly built than others. And so the ones that are looser and not as insulated tend to be like summer warm weather housing. And then they have like better built ones that are a little more secure. And then, the ones they really use a lot when it's cold are the cavities in trees. Sometimes they use burrows of other animals in the ground.
Even fox squirrels?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So they have, I think they have up to 9 different places that they can use in their little territory, their little home range for it. So they can go between.
Like a single squirrel will have 9
yeah,
homes.
Up to that. Yeah, something like that. Or these multiple homes that they can go to.
That blows my mind that they have, multiple nests that they're going to use. It's convenient though, which if they have up to 9 homes, how big is the range and territory of a single fox squirrel?
Up to 17 hectares. So could be pretty good.
Squirrels and cars. Why is it that they zigzag across the road? Like what's going through a squirrel's brain during that time?
I think there's that is definitely an anti um, predator avoidance kind of a behavior with a zigzag and trying to escape somebody running them down. Definitely doesn't work with cars very well. And so yeah, so there's also a comedian that I heard once. I have no idea where this is a long time ago. Um, who told a story about how they were getting ready to go across the street and they saw some money in the road, and they went to pick it up, and then there was a car coming right at them, and they were like, which way should I go, left or right? I don't know what's gonna go. And then the car slams on its brakes and a squirrel gets out and he says, it's not so easy, is it?
That really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? I remember seeing black squirrels for the first time about 15 years or so ago, and have continued to see them ever since. How are black squirrels related to fox squirrels? Are they the same species, subspecies? Is it a genetic mutation?
Yeah, so they are the same species, and it's due to a single mutation or a mutation of a single gene, which is this gene called the MC1R gene. And when that is has this mutation, it overproduces melanin, and it results in a black squirrel. Usually, it's an all black squirrel, but they do have differences, and so sometimes black squirrel, orange tail, or orange belly, black squirrel. I was at the zoo at the Omaha, the Henry Dorley Zoo one year. It was actually in the gorilla exhibit, and there's a tree there, and there was a family of fox squirrels that lived there apparently. And I saw the mom come down, the adult come down, and then these little babies come down, like four of them, and they were some orange, some black, kind of a mixed litter. And yeah, and so the female squirrel will mate with multiple males, and so that they can have multiple paternity litters. And so it was a mixture of that.
And why did they just start appearing? I feel like before 15 years ago, I never saw one. And now I feel like it's very common. Is there a reason, or we just didn't notice, or?
So there's a variety of things that we speculate about. Some of the earlier work on the melanistic squirrels were done in like southeast United States, I think Georgia, and in that area there's a lot of burns that happen. The forest is kind of fire adapted, and so the idea down there was that during the times where there's a forest fire, like the trees turn black, and that would help camouflage, and that kind of thing. So there's that hypothesis. We looked at temperature here, since it's cold here in the winter. I thought like maybe a black fur body would absorb heat a little bit more, and not that it would they would really use that heat a lot, but maybe it would offset how much you have to burn metabolically to keep yourself warm, or maybe it would extend your foraging time. You could go out when it's a little colder, or stay out a little later, or something. And so I had a student look at that, and they definitely were warmer, a little bit, not a huge amount, but a little bit. And so I think the black squirrels, that on a cloudy day, their little fur skin temperature kind of combination was like as warm as if it was a sunny day, kind of a thing. And so in the wintertime, it may you may be able to maybe absorb a little heat that way. One possibility. There's another way to look at that too, where that's kind of a problem, because if it's really cold outside and then you warm your skin temperature up, then that makes the gradient, a temperature gradient more, which is kind of the opposite of what you'd want to do a little bit too. So there's some issues with that. So it's kind of a really complicated subject, and I'm not a thermodynamics person, so that I would need to get in touch with someone who's a thermodynamics person, because it's really complicated. The heat that's produced internally that kind of diffuses out, and how insulative the fur is and that kind of stuff. Has a lot to do with it as well. It's not as easy as like, oh, it's just a black color that absorbs a lot of heat, like that. But the skin and fur is definitely warmer. And then the other part of that is, in the summer, which this is kind of like counterintuitive a little bit, but it's that gradient again. And so if it's really hot outside and you warm up, then the difference between you and the outside temperature is smaller. And if there's not as much gradient, you're not going to absorb as much heat. So, when you're cold and it's really hot outside, you tend to warm up fairly quickly, like a lot.
So it's a way that they stay cooler in the summer.
Possibly, yeah.
Maybe? Okay.
Yeah. So
that is counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. But the other thing about it that is of interest to me too, is that we're looking at that, you're seeing it, I'm seeing it in the city. Does it, are there melanistic ones out in the country, in the wild? And then are they increasing? And is it just randomness? It could be just genetic randomness that is just, they're just mating and they're just passing their genes on randomly more than they should or whatever. And so it's just increasing in the population. There's really no reason for it. That's possible too.
I'm going to watch next time I'm at a local state park that's a little out of the city and see if I see any black squirrels. I know I've seen squirrels out there, but now I can't remember what color they were.
So, but it's interesting, like, why are there more of them? There are definitely more. And I don't know why.
So stay tuned. Maybe in, 5 years, if this podcast is still going, I'll check back in and see if we have any new data on that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Science in action right now in our own backyards. How do squirrels, and fox squirrels in particular, benefit our local ecosystems?
So they're definitely a seed disperser. So we talked about that, that 25% of the things they bury don't get found, maybe. And so if it's in the right place with the right conditions, then that can germinate and grow. And then, they're just an animal in the ecosystem. And so, like, aside from dispersing for plants, they're a food item for other things. And they just have their own, like, existence that they're evolved to be. And, they just want to live and increase their fitness and do what they do.
There's a lot of joy to our lives, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you have questions about flora or fauna species you see in your backyard, please email them to info@ourwildbackyard.org, and it may just be answered on an upcoming episode. Until next time, take care and enjoy nature in your neighborhood.